Hey guys, how's it going? Ink back here with yet another video about the New World beta. At this point, I have put probably around 10 to 12 hours into the game, and as I've been playing, I've been kind of taking some mental notes and some physical notes about how I kind of feel, things that I like and dislike, and I wanted to go ahead and just make what is hopefully a very quick video kind of summarizing how I am feeling about the game so far. And of course, I'm not actually that far in. I'm not going to claim to be an expert or anything. This is more of just a first impressions of kind of what it felt like to play in the very beginning. I do also have a couple other videos up on the channel with actual gameplay of me doing all this. One showing the very beginning, kind of introduction and intro tutorial and all that. And then one several hours later, kind of picking up the story after the tutorial. So if you are interested in watching that, I will try to link it up in the top card or putting it at the end of the video or description or something like that. So just to summarize, if you're not aware, New World is a new game being published by Amazon's own in-house game studio that they just recently started, Amazon Games, and we're currently in a beta period, waiting for the game to release officially next month. Now this game did have a bit of a rocky start to it. It was originally intended to be a really hardcore survival game with a lot of really heavy PvP elements mixed in, but that wasn't very well received, so they kind of had to take it back to the drawing board a handful of times to rebalance things. Where they've kind of ended up now is a more traditional MMO kind of backbone that most people would expect from an MMO, but it does still carry over a lot of those survival elements as well as a heavy emphasis on PvP, and you'll probably actually see a lot of those kind of as we describe the game and some of its pros and some of its flaws as we get into it. So starting to talk about my experience with the game so far, there is one elephant in the room that we really just need to get out of the way right up front. The beta that we're in is only scheduled to last for about 2 weeks, and when the beta goes down, they are going to wipe all of the servers and reset all progress that's been made so that when the game comes out for real, everyone is going to be starting from square one again. I don't personally agree with or like this decision, but hey, whatever. What's really important here is that because I know upfront that none of my progress actually really matters, I haven't dived too deeply into any one thing. Even the things that I've really liked, I haven't let myself get too deep into because I'm just gonna have to redo it later, So yeah, this is all just really surface level first impressions. Now getting into actually starting the game, the first thing that you're going to see is a cutscene showing how your character winds up on the island of Eternum, which is where the game takes place, and then you get to customize your character. Unfortunately, the character customization here is very, very lackluster. There's not a whole lot of choice. There's a whole bunch of presets for you to pick from, but you don't get a whole lot of influence over what your character really looks like. There's like 2 body presets, basically boiling down to a pointy chest or a flat chest, and then, a handful of face options, eye color, hair color, some boring hair presets. It's all just very cookie cutter. There's some options for tattoos and face freckles and blemishes and things like that, but you can't move anything or anything like that. It's all very just barely kind of acceptable. It can get worse, and I've seen worse in other games, but if it's any worse than this, those games don't tend to do well. Next up would be where you pick your class, but New World actually does not have a class system. You get a bunch of abilities and skills based on what weapons you're using, and you can have 2 weapons at a time that you can swap between. So it's kind of like having 2 classes, but you can put your weapons away and equip new ones at any time. It's kind of like Skyrim, where using a weapon will increase your experience with that weapon, which gives you skill points to get, abilities and get better at using that weapon. But if you get tired of using sword and shield, you can just put it in your bag and pull out a great axe, and now you're using that instead. Beginning the game, I think this is a great system because of course it gives you a lot of flexibility to figure out what works for you and what you like best, but it's going to be something to check out for the late game once you kind of have all of your abilities. What are you going to be able to do, and how are you going to be able to combine your sword weapon abilities with your bow abilities and whatnot? Moving on to actually starting the tutorial, the first time you're able to control your character is through an interactable cutscene. After that initial sequence, you get sent down a bit of a hallway fighting a couple more monsters, and then your weapon levels up and you kind of learn about how skills work, which I'll get to in a little bit here. And then as you keep going on, you get a nice view of Eternum. Again, that's the name of the island that this world is on. And then the tutorial actually ends with a boss fight, but the boss fight ends when you've dealt half damage to it or half health to it, and it just does this cutscene where boom, you're dead, I guess, and then you wake up on the actual game world, kind of ready to play the game. It's a little awkward. I think that's definitely something that they can rework, you know, the end of that tutorial section. As far as actual combat goes, it is an action-based combat system, kind of like the Elder Scrolls Online, where you are able to move around your opponents, press the left mouse button to swing your sword at your enemies, and the travel path of your weapons does matter. So let's say that you're swinging your weapon in a horizontal arc, because that's just, you know, the first hit of your weapon just does that kind of swing. It will hit every enemy in that horizontal arc. It's not like you're targeting one enemy and that's the only one that you're hitting. If you've got two in front of you and your sword touches both of them, you're going to deal damage to both of them. So I do think that that is pretty nice, but this is where we start seeing some of the rollover from more of the like hardcore survival elements of the game that don't really work all that well here. We do have a block button, which I mentioned before. There's also the ability to dodge. You do like a dodge roll or a sidestep depending on something I'll get to later, but it's very clunky. It doesn't always seem to want to work very well. It just seems a little laggy, I guess. Like sometimes you'll think you clicked the button at the right time, but you'll still get hit anyway, or visually you will see yourself block or dodge at the right time and then still take damage anyway. So it's definitely one of those things that just needs some polish. While fighting, you have about 5 different attacks that you can do. You have your light attack, which is just left mouse click. You'll usually do a combo of attacks depending on what your weapon is, or you can hold down that button to kind of charge up and do a heavy attack. And then by using your weapon, you can level it up and earn skill points, which then you can put into learning up to 3 different skill abilities for each weapon. Each weapon actually has 2 upgrade trees, each focusing on a different thing that the weapon is good at. And as you earn skill points, you can kind of distribute those wherever you want. You can go all in one skill tree or kind of a half and half, or a 2/3 one, 1/3 the other. Doesn't really matter, but as far as your abilities go, you can only learn 3. But if you don't like what you picked, or you just want to try a different part of the skill tree, you can respec at any time. Up until level 20, you can respec completely for free as much as you want. And then after level 20, I believe that there is a gold cost to respecing that does increase every time. So once you've kind of got an idea of a build and you're getting into the mid game, you want to figure out what you're going to do and then stick to it. But in the early game, while you're figuring things out, you can swap it around as much as you want. Your general stats actually work pretty much the exact same way. There are 5 stats, and as you as a character level up, you will gain points to increase your stats. And up to level 20, you can respec your stat points as much as you want whenever you want. And then past level 20, again, you have to pay to do it, and it gets more expensive each time, but you can technically still do it whenever you want. Your 5 core stats are Strength, Dexterity, Intelligence, Focus, and Constitution. Your strength stat is going to determine the damage output of your swords and great axes, kind of those traditional heavy strength weapons. Dexterity is going to be the damage output of your ranged weapons, as well as spears and rapiers. Intelligence is magic-based damage for the fire staff and the ice gauntlet. Focus is your kind of healing output with the life staff. And then Constitution is just your overall health. The last thing I'll say before we move on from more combat focused talk here is I do wish that there was a wider selection of weapons, and I really hope that they start putting in more weapons as the game releases. As of right now, there's only 10 weapons in the game. There are bows, warhammers, muskets, spears, sword and shield, hatchet, rapier, life staff, fire staff, and ice gauntlets. So no pistols, no daggers, no dual wielding swords, no shield main hand, no two-handed greatswords. It does feel a little lacking. Moving on to movement and controls, the WASD movement does feel pretty good. Thankfully, that's one quick way to ruin a game, is to make the movement poor. The game does have a jump button and an auto run button, but unfortunately it does not have a sprint button. Your general running speed is about as fast as you're gonna go. No way to sprint, and weirdly enough, it has dedicated buttons to walk instead of run, and to crouch and then crouch walk, and then also to go prone and crawl on the ground. So plenty of ways to go slower, but nothing that's going to make you go faster. And when I say nothing, I really do mean nothing. This game doesn't even have mounts. As of right now, there's not even any plans to have mounts in the game, though some people are speculating that mounts are going to be put in the in-game shop as soon as the game releases. But as of right now, we got nothing, so get used to walking everywhere. The game does have fast traveling, thankfully, but it's actually a very limited fast travel system. You can only fast travel to certain towns that you have visited before, and fast traveling costs a certain amount of a resource called Azoth. Now, I've heard that once you get later on in the game, it's pretty easy to get Azoth and you can kind of fast travel as much as you want, but I, again, have been playing for some like 10 or 12 hours, and the only Azoth I've gotten so far has been from a quest that gave it to me specifically because they wanted me to fast travel as part of the quest. So I don't know yet. Next, quickly going over the UI and the menus. Menus look pretty good in this game. Both, they visually look good, but also I've never gotten lost in a menu. They don't present like a whole bunch of information in one place and make you kind of dig through things. It's really easy to kind of get around and find the tab that you're looking for, find the information that you're looking for, and you just know where everything is pretty easily. So that is super awesome. The map is also very detailed, which is something that you kind of wouldn't expect in a survivalist based game. Like, the map will tell you basically where everything is. You can even look up to see where resources are, and it will tell you generally kind of where iron is on the map or where sheep are, things like that, which sounds great at first. And then you realize that it comes at the cost of one of those survival elements that they've tried to port over, which is that when you are not looking at your map, you don't know where anything is unless you can physically see it in front of you. There's no mini-map at all in this game, and there is a compass at the top of your screen, kind of like the Elder Scrolls, but it doesn't actually show anything on it other than the cardinal directions and the general direction of your next objective. Plus, things that you can interact with don't light up or anything unless you are right on them. So just as a general example here, let's say that you're in a town and you need to get to one of the crafting benches. You're going to open up your menu and go to your map, and great, the map is going to tell you exactly where that crafting bench is. You're going to close the map, and now you kind of have to use your own sense of direction to navigate through town, make sure you're going in the right direction, know where to turn, checking your map if you don't really know where it is, and then once you get in the general vicinity, you need to either know what that crafting table looks like, or you have to walk up on every table that you think it might be until it finally starts to glow and say, hey, you can interact with this and this is what it is. It's not that bad, it's just so annoying. Plus, that little interaction pop-up is based on your proximity to the thing that you want to interact with, not if you're looking at it or not where your cursor is pointed. So say something is on the ground and you want to pick it up. I feel it's pretty common that most people are going to be standing, a couple feet away from it, kind of looking down with their mouse pointed onto the object. That's not going to do it. You need to walk right up on it to the point that your character probably can't see it, and that is when you'll get the prompt to pick it up. It's really awkward, especially when you're trying to pick up rocks or skin an animal on the ground or something like that. Again, it's not the end of the world by any means, it's just really annoying. Last complaint for this section, the keybinds are not handled very well for this game. First of all, you can't use modifier keys for your keybinds, meaning you can't have W for one thing and Shift W for another thing. You can't have Shift anything, Control anything, or Alt anything. Now, this game doesn't need you to be pressing 80 different buttons all at the same time like some of the other MMOs, so maybe they were thinking that you just don't need modifier keys, but there are still a lot of buttons that you're going to want to have access to, and it's just, again, it's just annoying. And part of the reason that this does become a problem is because some of your combat keybinds will actually start to interfere with your non-combat keybinds when you try to rebind them to custom buttons. So as an example, by default, the R button, if you're in combat, will use one of your abilities, but when you are not in combat and you're in the right situation, you can press the R button to bait a hook so that you can go fishing. Well, if you want to rebind R for something that is specifically only in combat, there's not a way to do that and not affect what R does outside of combat. So if you try to bind R to, let's say, your light melee attack for whatever reason, it's going to tell you, we can do this, but it's also going to unbind that you have R set to baiting a hook. R already does two different things based on if you are or are not in combat, so why can't we keep doing that with the custom keybinds? The game just doesn't let you do that. Once you start messing around with the custom keybinds, now each button is going to do only one thing. Moving on to something good, I think that the PvP for this game and how they've decided to handle it is, for the most part, really, really cool. So in New World, there are 3 different factions all vying for control of the territories in Aeternum. And somewhere around level 10, you get to pick which faction that you're going to be on. And then again, all of the factions will kind of war with each other to see who controls each territory. Doing certain kinds of PvP missions and then also just doing PvP in general will increase your faction's standing in a particular territory. And then if your faction has the highest standing in an area, then they officially control it. And if your faction officially controls an area, you get a buff in that area, and you even get to control certain things. Like I know that the faction that controls a territory gets to control the trading tax in that area. I don't know too much about it, but sounds pretty powerful. I like it. And then if your faction does not control a territory, you can do PvP missions and PvP and all that in that area to actually weaken that faction's control over the area. And then once they have been weakened enough, your faction can declare a war on them, in which case, like in your particular server, there will be a war scheduled for a certain time and day, and then you just kind of show up, and then the 2 factions will just do one big PvP war on each other to determine who controls the area after the war is over. So, you know, that sounds awesome. You just do a big war to decide who wins and who controls the place. That is awesome. And there's also a very similar type of PvE content where you will kind of defend a settlement while a bunch of enemy monsters will come up and try to take it over. Again, I've not been able to actually partake in anything like this. The beta's only been going on for a couple days, and I haven't been in any of the alphas or anything like that. So I haven't gotten to try any of it, but it all sounds really, really cool, and I'm really excited to try out all this stuff. Oh, and before I forget, you can actually change your faction if you don't like the one that you're on for whatever reason, or you want to coordinate with friends to make sure that you're all in the same faction. You can change it. It's on a 120-day cooldown, so you do gotta like be intentional with it and you gotta know what you want, but you can change it if you need to later. Now, reining it back into just the individual player versus player, just one person against another, there are a few pluses and minuses to go over real quick here. First of all, if you win a PvP match against another player, you do get to loot an item off of their body. I've only been doing it at pretty low levels, so the things that I have gotten have all been like uncommon weapons, which for my level and for the gear that I had was pretty good. I got a handful of nice upgrades for that, so no complaints there. And if you are the one that dies, you don't actually lose anything. Whenever you die, your equipment does suffer some like penalty to it or like durability loss to it, but you don't actually lose any items or anything like that. So in a way, there's nothing wrong with doing PvP. You don't ever lose anything. But you do have to be careful because whenever you die, you have to choose where to respawn. And you're going to respawn at the last inn that you were at or at the last camp that you were at. And if it's been a while since you camped or went to an inn, you might get teleported pretty far away and then have to backtrack. So there's enough of a risk reward there without it feeling like you are actually losing something meaningful. The PvP was mostly pretty okay, but I did keep running into one thing that was super frustrating, which was that I was never able to initiate combat with someone because I wanted to. The only time I ever got in a fight with someone was when they attacked me. I could never attack someone else to start PvP. It was like I would attack and just nothing would happen and then go on about my day, and someone else comes and attacks me and I'm at half health and now all of a sudden I'm dead. Super frustrating, and I don't know exactly what was happening there. Maybe I was doing something wrong, or I don't really know. It's something I'm gonna have to look into, especially as the game really comes out, but just for the sake of the beta, trying to do that was really frustrating. Moving on to the last major topic, we've got crafting and gathering. Now this was easily my favorite part of the entire game. I loved everything about these systems. This part of the game has a very like old school RuneScape kind of feel to it, where you can spend the whole day just gathering whatever it is that you're trying to do. You can harvest plants or mine or fish or whatever, and every step of the way you're earning experience for what you're doing, and that particular skill is leveling up, which in turn is letting you mine for better ores or fish for better fish or whatever. And then once you have a full inventory on whatever you're getting, you can take it all back to town, keep it in your inventory, or go to the crafting tables and start making stuff out of it, which of course you can sell, or you can salvage back into materials so that you can keep crafting more stuff and whatnot. And again, every step of the way, you're increasing your skill in that crafting system. At this point, I know that this isn't exactly a unique thing. You know, a lot of games these days have really nice and complex crafting systems and whatnot, but something about RuneScapes just really stuck with me. And games today have great systems, sure, but they're just not the same. And New World is the first time since RuneScape I have felt that same kind of satisfaction from gathering and taking it all back and crafting it into stuff and whatnot. I don't know, there's just something about it. But yeah, there are all kinds of things across the world that you can go and harvest, from certain kinds of plants to animal skins to trees that you can cut down and whatnot. And then the crafting system, it's simple enough that you can just look at it and kind of know exactly what you're doing, but you can look down through the menus and see what's coming up next. And you can see this really awesome kind of progression as you level up your crafting skills and what you can make next. And you can see where it's going to get intricate as you keep leveling it up. And again, I know this is nothing unique at this point, but it felt really good. Now, just a couple quality of life things here. You can craft multiple of the same item at a time. And when I say that, I really do mean if you want to make 100 of something, it's going to take the exact same amount of time that it would take to make one of that item. You know, I know in a lot of games, they will make you sit through a big animation, or like in Guild Wars 2, you can queue up 100 of an item and it'll go faster than normal, but like you're still going to be sitting there for a hot minute. In this game, no, you've got all of your items. So that's super nice. And then once you do craft something, you can immediately choose right then and there. Are you just going to put it in your bag and keep crafting? Are you going to leave? Are you going to equip the item you made? Are you going to salvage it immediately? You just get all of those options right then and there. So just a couple of those nice quality of life things. Oh, and then also, if you are gathering and then get interrupted for some reason, whatever the thing is you're gathering will remember your progress, so you can just pick up where you're left off. So if you're spending, you know, a hot minute trying to cut down a tree and something comes and attacks you, you can fight it and then go back to the tree and you don't have to start all over. And finally, let's move on to just some odds and ends, some things that I just didn't know where else to categorize. So first up are camps and camping, which I've mentioned a few times already. Fairly early on, you learn how to set up a camp in the overworld, and resting at a camp will slowly regen your health a little bit, and it also serves as a place for you to respawn if you die. At a camp, you can also craft some basic items like rations to help restore your HP. And what I think is really nice is that if you are running down the road and you find someone else's camp that they set up, you can actually rest at other people's camps. You don't always have to set up your own. Next up are territory rewards. As you complete quests in each territory, you will earn certain rewards for kind of increasing your standing there. Now, this is a PvE thing. This is completely separate from the whole faction war PvP thing I was talking about earlier. This is just PvE and kind of the game's way of recognizing what you're doing in each particular area, which again, you get from completing quests in certain areas, and then you get these rewards. It's kind of like a skill point system, except instead of putting your points into increasing your ability with a weapon, you're putting your points into increasing certain buffs in your ability to do things in a region. So for example, you can permanently increase your experience gain in this area by 3%. And then the next level, maybe you increase your crafting speed in this area by 5%, and so on. And these things do stack as you get more and more of them. I think this is a really nice way for rewarding the character for doing story missions and side quests and things like that, other than just generic XP and loot. Speaking of loot, your character has an inventory weight limit. Basically, everything weighs a certain amount. Your character can carry a certain amount of weight, and if you are carrying too much stuff, you get over encumbered and you move very slowly and you cannot fast travel. It is kind of like Skyrim when you get over encumbered. So you really want to watch out for inventory management to make sure that you're not getting too heavy. Your character also has a weight system completely separate from your inventory that determines how well you can dodge. Very similarly to Dark Souls, if your weight on your character is under a certain percent, you can do this nice fluid dodge roll. But then if you get a little heavier than that, you can only do a backstep. And if you are really heavy, then you get like this heavy backstep that doesn't really do much. Going back to combat for a quick second, this game is really generous when it comes to tagging quest targets. So what I mean by that is that if someone is fighting something and then I go up and I fight it with them, we will both get the experience, and if it's part of a quest, we will both get the quest reward for doing that. There is no like, you fought it first so only you get the experience, or I got the last hit so I get the experience. It's just, hey, we both fought it together, we both get all of the reward for it. So I think that's really awesome, and I'm pretty sure it means that we're not going to have to worry about like camping out bosses and making sure, oh, I'm the one that gets to fight the boss this time and having to wait your turn and all that. If there's a boss spawned around, I think anyone should just be able to go and fight it together and all get the reward for it. And the last thing to talk about here would just be with the quests and kind of the story. I haven't really said all that much about quests and the story so far because honestly, right now there's just not really much to talk about. Like I said earlier, this beta, everything that's happening during this beta is going to get completely wiped and we're going to have to start all over. So I have not really been reading anything. I've not been paying attention to the storyline or anything like that. And then I can tell you that there have been a lot of fetch quests in the game so far. I mentioned that in one of the playthrough videos earlier that it took me like 4 hours to get from the tutorial to kind of the next story mission because we were just doing a whole bunch of fetch quests because they needed us to level up basically. Now this is not necessarily a bad thing. I know it's going to rub some people the wrong way. I didn't really mind it, to be completely honest. I never had a problem with the substance of what I was doing. My only problem was just knowing, well, it's going to get wiped away, so it doesn't really matter what I'm doing. And of course, that's just a mindset thing for this beta. But once we get back up to the real game, I don't particularly care about that much. I just wanted to point it out because I know some people will. And that is pretty much going to do it for this video. I just wanted to jot down some of my own thoughts and feelings about the game, just kind of talk it out. And if anyone out there is actually listening to this and has stuck through it this long, thank you so much. I hope this gave you some insight on kind of what this game is like and what it's going to be like at launch. I ended up having a whole lot more to say about it than I originally thought, but I hope that just goes to show that I am actually really enjoying the game and I've thought a lot about it and I have a lot to say about it. I know a lot of the opinions that I gave and have been giving in other videos have been a little negative, but I do just want to assure everyone out there I am enjoying the game a whole lot. I really can't wait for it. The only, like really the only bad thing I have to say so far is about this beta situation. I just can't wait for the actual game to come out so that I can really get into it. But anyway, I am not going to waste any more of your guys' time. Again, thank you guys so much. If you did get this far, if you could please do me a favor and hit that like button, I would greatly appreciate it. And I hope you all have a wonderful day. I will catch you all later.